Hello, this is Dan from EDEMO Electric Bikes, and this is my review of the Load 60. It's just a bit longer, it's got a box on the front. Was that it? It is the ultimate car replacement type bike. Super practical, and you can pile loads and loads of crap in it.
You're quite happy with the word crap?
I always think it's always good to offend people just a little bit. Not too much. And that's a C word you can use. The Load 60 is the ultimate cargo bike out on the market at the moment. Probably one of the most special things about it. One is it's made by Riese Müller and we absolutely love them. But the other thing is rear suspension. The bike is super smooth, really comfortable, and capable of doing literally anything that you want to do. We've got people that use this to load up tools for work. They put their children in it, or more importantly, they put the dog and all the camping gear and head off for some big old days out. This one is actually the Load 60. There is another one called the Load 75. The 60 and the 75 part of it refer to the length of this piece at the front here, the base of the cargo area. So a 60 is 600 mil long, or 60 centimeters long, and the 75 is 75 meters. 75 meters, that would be enormous. 75 centimeters long. So this is probably the more compact version of it. It's the bike that I'm riding at the moment, and if I'm honest, this is more than enough. I think if you were going for 3 children to sit in the front with a third rear-facing seat, then obviously the 75 would probably be a little bit more practical. Before everybody gets really excited about the colour of this bike and phones up and says, I've got to have the orange bike, it's not available. You can't have the orange anymore. It's a discontinued colour. When Riese Müller brought it out back in 2020, I loved it so much. I hadn't bought myself one, and then I saw it pop up on the dealer website in Germany, and I just grabbed it because I had to have one. So sadly it's not available in orange, but there are 3 other colours you can get the Load 60 in. You can have it in the Tundra Grey, which is the same sort of greeny grey colour as the Super Delight. You can have it in a coal grey matte, which is a sort of a coal grey matte colour that you can have in, or you can have it in a white, which is a gloss finish that's on it. So all 3 colours are really popular. I'd say probably most popular are probably the coal grey matte and the Tundra Grey coming in second. Obviously the frame size, there is no different sizes. It is a one size fits all, and that's done by a couple of really nice things or features that are on here. So first of all, let's have a look at the seat post that's on it. So a quick release seat post tube, so the seat will drop all the way down in. For reference, I'm 6'1", so you sort of see what size this is. So you can easily have somebody sort of down at sort of 5'3" riding this bike, that sort of size going up. And then it's got this massive extension that comes up onto it. So without going too far, there's a minimum insertion. So if you just happen to have an 8-foot giant in your family, you could actually have them riding this bike as well. So maybe a little overkill. So we're looking really about that's suitable for what I want. But the other part that goes with it that makes this suitable for most riders is how you can configure the handlebars. So there's 2 adjustments you've got on here. You can set your handlebars so they rock forwards or backwards, and you can also set the height. So if I show you how the height works, first of all, to raise and drop, we will literally open the quick release on the side, and there's a little brass piece, button that we press in. It drops down, pop it into place. And if we want to move the angle of it, we're going to undo these 2. Little catch on the side, and we'll be able to drop it into the position that we want to put it in. And then all we need to do is lock these back into place. And that's it. We've now set up the handlebars. And you'll see from that it's relatively quick to change. So even if there's a couple of people in the family that are actually going to use this bike, you're not going to have a problem sort of changing all the sizing that goes with it. So it is a universal size, one size fits all type bike. Looking at the gearing that you can get on this bike, so like most of the Riese Müller bikes, there's 3 different types of gearing that you can go for. So The basic is that comes with the bike as standard is called a touring spec. Touring spec for Riese Müller means a derailleur on the back. It's probably going to be 11-speed Dior XT that goes on there. So a really nice low gear that you can drop into. Because if you've got kids or loads of kit loaded up into the front of this, you're going to need that low gear to be able to spin your legs up and crawl up all the hills, but no hill is going to stop you. The next configuration up from that is called the Vario. The Vario uses something called an Varial Hub. One of the big advantages of it is it then uses a belt drive rather than a chain onto the rear wheel. And then the last option, which this bike is fitted with, is the roll-off. So this is a Gates carbon belt drive leading onto the roll-off hub on the back. It's quite a nice way that it's designed. You'll see that there's this little pulley that's sitting here. The reason for this is to actually lift this up over this chainstay, or this bar that's sitting here. And it means that we don't have to have a break in the frame to be able to replace the belt. So when we drop it off, we can take the belt off the sprocket and we can pull it through and take it off. If this was a hardtail bike, you would see that the belt's sitting down below and there would actually be a break in the frame here so that we can actually replace it. So a nice little feature there that lifts the belt up on the top to get over to the rear wheel. On the rear wheel at the back, so here we're looking at a roll-off hub. So this one is a 14-speed internal hub. It's an electronic shifter. It's basically a no maintenance type system. So on the top here we've got a little grub screw, and in here is where we're going to place the oil after 3,000 kilometers or a year. It's a really simple system. It's a little bit more expensive, the roll-off, but in for a penny, in for a pound. The other type of drive that we can go for on these bikes, the next step down from the roll-off would be to go for the Varial Hub. So that would be internal hub again, so sealed hub and no maintenance, and would still be then a belt drive to take onto it, so the maintenance is really low. And then the cheapest option, but bizarrely the most efficient, so the one you'll get the most range from, is then a chain cassette with a derailleur. Whilst it's the most efficient and the lightest version, it is only that if you maintain it. So if you're not the type of person who is that bothered about oiling chains or keeping them clean or checking for stretch or indexing the gears on the back or fettling with all of that, then it's unlikely that you're going to have an efficient chain and cassette. So maybe consider going up to the Varial Hub, or my preference on this bike would definitely be to go for the roll-off hub. So other things to notice on this bike, as standard, it's going to come with the Supernova Mini 99 light on the front, or sorry, M99 Mini light on the front, and also the brake light on the rear. So that's brake lights and also a main beam and dip light on the front. So kitted out with everything that you want from the lighting side of it and a little bit extra as well. So if you're going to be using this as a car replacement, it's going to obviously, work through the summer no problem. But when you come to those sort of darker winter nights, you're going to happily carry on riding, through most of the night in the darkness. And most importantly, people are going to see you with all the main beam and the sort of the brake lights and everything that go with it. So really nice features, and they're as standard on this bike. Moving a little bit further forward, the next thing to notice is the lock. So as standard, we've got this lock that's down here. It's you call it a cafe lock, so it's an Abbas shield lock. Basically, it's got a bolt. You turn the key in the lock, and the bolt slips through the spokes of the wheel and will stop the bike, for the wheel from turning, so nobody can wheel your bike off. You can buy a chain extension that goes on it. Comes in a nice little bag that sits under the saddle here, and then you can fix a chain extension on round a lamp post or something to fix something to it. Nice thing about this bike is that if you're going to use the cafe lock that's on here, you won't have any worries of somebody not being able to push your bike away but picking up and running with it, because nobody's going to pick it up and run away with this one. So it's quite a secure bike for that reason. Now, the biggest feature obviously is this, I think, but one of the other big features on this bike is this. It's the rear suspension. So a cargo bike with rear suspension is something really special, because it tends to be cargo bikes are really sort of practical. They're not boring, but they're not so exciting. They're not about the rider, they're more about the piece at the front. With Riese Müller, what they've done is made the Load bikes with this rear suspension. And rear suspension is for two things. One is comfort for the rider. So obviously having a nice lot of give on the bike, softens the potholes that are out there. But the other thing is it's designed to pin the rear wheel to the floor. So when you're traveling at higher speeds and you're hitting things like potholes and stuff, rather than the back end starting to sort of jump around and get a little bit skittish, it's actually pinning it into the ground the whole time, so you're always in contact with the floor. It means that you can travel incredibly fast on this bike and you can still feel really stable and really safe. I'll quite happily hit about 35 mile an hour in the morning coming down to work on this bike downhill before scrubbing it off, otherwise I'll disappear through a hedge at the bottom of the hill. But yeah, it really does instill confidence, so it's a lovely feature to have, and the thought of going back to a bike that's a hardtail after this is a bit of a struggle, so I do like the full suspension on this bike. This is the new motor from Bosch. It's the cargo line motor. Essentially the same motor, I guess, as the new Gen 4 motor that's used on the other bikes. It's 250 watts, 85 Newton meters torque, I think, as well. But the most important feature about the cargo line version is that it has a 400% assistance compared to the 340% assistance that you'd see on the other bikes from Riese Müller, which just means that you can have an extra push, and all the torque is actually loaded down at low speeds. So, with a cargo line, we're aware that we're going to load all this space up with absolutely piles and piles of stuff in here. So we need that torque at a low speed to be able to move off nice and smoothly. So that's what the cargo line motor is all about. So really, really nice upgrade that's happened here in 2021. And it's well worth getting the bike with this new motor that's in it. As standard, it comes with a 500 watt-hour battery. So that's going to be good for probably 25 to 30 miles, maybe a little bit more, depending on the weight that you're actually carrying. You can upgrade this to go for a twin battery, and the other battery is mounted onto the side just through here. It's another 500 watt-hour battery, so essentially it doubles the range of your bike, so 1,000 watt-hours that sit in here. At the moment, our bike is showing that we've got a range of 66 miles and we've only used 15% of the battery, so maybe sort of 70 miles range that we're going to get from both these batteries fully charged. This doesn't have much in its favour when we're looking at range on this bike. We've got full suspension, we've got the weight of the bike, and we've got everything that we're going to chuck into it. So imagining you're going to get 50 miles off a single battery, I think, is maybe pushing your luck. The bike's provided as standard with a 6 amp fast charger, so you'll find that this charges, if you manage to run it completely flat, will probably recharge itself in sort of 4 to 5 hours, that sort of time, from completely flat. Highly unlikely you're going to be there though. So like all the other bikes in the Riese Müller range, the configuration on the handlebars is pretty similar. We can see we've got these ergon grips on the end here, so they're nice, comfortable, nice sort of support for your hands here, so you can get really comfortable hand position. So next thing in here is the roll-off shifter. So this bike has a 14-speed internal hub, and the gear change works on these buttons here. So you've got plus a gear, and you've got down the gears. And when you look at the screen here, you'll see that the gear pops up and changes, so it tells you what gear you're in. If you're on the screen, it'll tell you in tiny little numbers up the start screen, it'll tell you in tiny little numbers what gear you're actually in. The main difference on these, they've gone for uprated brakes. So on the normal bikes, we'll find that they've got Magura MT4 and MT5 brakes. On the cargo bikes, we're fitted with TRP brakes, so they've just got a bit more power to them because of the extra weight that we're carrying. So it's quite surprising you can uprate the brakes further, but you've definitely managed it with these. So yeah, really lovely, nice smooth braking and an awful lot of power there as well. Next along is this button, which is for the lights. So it's a main beam and dipped lights that comes as standard on this bike. So if I just switch them on a second, hopefully you'll see something. We can press this and we get a main beam and a dipped. And the other nice feature on this bike is when we pull the brake lever, we've got a brake light on the back as well. So we've got brake lights and a main beam and a dip light as well. So looking at the specification on this bike that we've got here, this is the Neon cockpit that's on here. We could have gone for the smartphone hub, the key oxygen tubia, or obviously this one here. Lots of different options, and generally we show them across all the bikes as we get them in the specification that we've got. But a really quick roundup of this one. We can see on the screen here, this is our speed, this would be the power of the motor, and then we'd see our power on top. We can tell the assistance level that we're in using the little plus and minus, so green from eco all the way up to turbo, that's in there. And it will also show us the range that we've got left on our battery. So at the moment, this bike is 84% charged, and that says we've got a range of about 66 miles left. That range is calculated based on the cycling that I've been doing. So I tend to cycle backwards and forwards to work, up and down a hill. So that's pretty good to know that 66 miles on 84%. I can't do the maths, but I'm sure somebody will that tells you the total range that I would have got from a full battery. With an eye on, it's nice you've got a touch screen so you can scroll through some of the other bits and pieces that we've got. Maps, we've got a sat nav on there so we can go in, we can choose different places to go, search off of a thing for points of interest. And another really good thing as well, we could go here, so we could look, there's things like cycle down to our showroom in Bristol. So I can put a route in. It's one that I've created on the the Bosch e-bike Connect app. Drops in the route that I've created, and I can follow it on the sat nav. So all sorts of nice things that we can do on there. And last one is we can see how much time we've spent in each mode. The red ring means that I haven't spent any time in anything other than turbo. But that's what this bike's designed for, isn't it? You just ride it in turbo. Why would you use the other ones? That's silly. So yeah, anyway, so that's all the different modes, 100% in turbo. And you can see when I'm doing that, I'm actually putting in 28% of the power compared to the bike doing 72% of the work. So I'm still putting a fair chunk of work in, but obviously it's a much heavier bike with an awful lot of kit in, and that's why I'm using the motor so much more. And that's my excuse for it being in turbo the whole time. Oh, rats, I've been caught out. Right, come back down into normal. And then moving back out this way, okay, so we've got the bell on this side here, lovely bell supplied by Riese Müller. And then the buttons that come for controlling the screen. So we've got the plus and the minus buttons for changing the assistance level. We've got a left and a right to scan through all the screens. And then on the top, like all the other bikes, if we press the little button on top, we've got a walk assist. So if I was to press and hold the plus button now, the bike will actually walk alongside us. Rather clever. And then the fun part. So this is what this bike is about. This stuff was like, let's cover that first because that's boring, but look at this part. So the Load 60 is really about everything that happens in this space that we've got here. So the bike that I have specified, I've gone for a couple of different options just to really show people that come into the shop what is available. This one, first of all, this is the tarpaulin that comes on the top of it. So it's quite a simple system with a piece of elastic that goes around it. I'm just going to take them all off so you can open it. And then inside this space, I've gone for a couple of things. First of all, high sides. So there is an option to have lower sides. So you could have these sides sitting down at this height, or you could have no sides at all and have this completely open. But the low side walls would sort of sit in like this. If you have low side walls, you can't then fit a tarpaulin because it hangs over this edge that's here. But there's loads of configurations of sides that you can go for. The next thing I've chosen on this one is 2 child seats. Now, sadly, my children are an awful lot larger than would actually fit in here, but they're not little anymore, which is a bit of a shame, but I still ride around with 2 child seats that are in there just to show people what we can actually put in. They're really nice. They've got this adjustment on the back here so that we can raise the seats up and down, and we can also make them sort of slide and relax. So there's lots of positions in there for the smaller and bigger kids. And then they come with these 5-point seat belts as well, so you can strap your kids in. And I always found that when my kids were smaller, it's nice having them sitting in the front because you can still talk to them. Whereas when you've got them sitting on the back in a child seat, instead they're just staring at your backside, which is probably not the nicest thing for them to stare at as a child. So it's nice having them in the front here. And the kids, when they sit in here, you know, people come and try these bikes, and when the kids sit in the front here, they absolutely love it. And doing laps of town and sitting in the front of the cargo bike is the best thing you could ever possibly want. So this is one option, having the couple of seats that are in here. If you go for the Load 70, the slightly larger bike, you can then have a third seat in here as well, which is facing the other way, which is a slightly larger seat as well. So in theory, you could carry 3 children on one of these bikes. On the one that I've gone for the glove box that is down in the base as well. So it just gives a bit more space to load more crap into the front of your bike. I use it to store things like my sandwiches, my bike lock and all that sort of stuff, you know, waterproof trousers, stuff you just don't want hanging around, chuck it in there out the way. The only thing that I would say is a slight downside about the cargo box is it does hang quite low out the bottom of the bike. So if you're irresponsible and sort of cycling off the edge of pavements or off-road, you might actually catch it every so often, but I've not managed to break it yet. So the last thing to think about on the front area here is there is a nice waterproof cover that you can get for the child area as well. So it's a big old cover that comes up, sitting up here. It's got clear plastic in it as well. You can lift the sides up. You can buy a sunshade to go in it. So if you really are going to use this as an alternative to a car, there's no reason that you couldn't transport your kids in this all year round. The last piece then, so looking at the front of the bike that we've got over here, so we've got this smaller wheel that sits on the front. Again, huge stopping power with the hydraulic disc brakes that we've got on there. And again, we've got suspension on here as well. And this piece of metal you can see going down here, this is the arm that's actually steering the front wheel. And one of the things I say to people is when you start riding these bikes, the last thing to do is it's really tempting to look at that front wheel there as you ride off, and that's a guaranteed way of falling off. Lift your eyes up, look where you want to go, and all of a sudden the bike is super stable. So it probably takes you about 10 meters to get used to the fact that it's not a normal bike, and then after that you are just off and away. So another one of the options on this bike is the rear pannier rack. So just in case you didn't have enough space at the back, you can also add a rack onto the back here that you can add pannier bags on too. Also, this bike comes fitted with a stand underneath, so it's quite a nice way that the stand works in that, I don't know how this is going to work in here actually. Let me just try and drag it back. So to get it off the stand, you can just roll the bike forwards and the stand pops up, and then to put it back down again, stand on it, and comes back. And once it's on the stand, it's super stable. So if the kids wanted to jump in the front, you can. But the coolest thing about it is once you're practiced, you get on your bike on the stand, and then you can ride it off. And I didn't fall. That is the coolest thing about this bike, isn't it?
I never do it.
Do you not?
No, I think it scares me.
No, it is the best. It is the best. Because you just got to sit there like watching for traffic.
Yeah.
And so one of the really good options on this bike is to add on to it something called the GX pack. And the GX pack, surprisingly, is an off-road kit that goes on it. So it's knobbly tyres that go on front and rear, slightly more aggressive pedals that go on there. And then, believe it or not, this can be ridden off-road. So if you want to see an example of it being ridden off-road, you need to go and see our video of Rufus and Elba going up Snowdon on their Load 60 and also doing things like King Alfred's Way. If you're thinking about whether you should have a Load 60 in your life, the answer is yes, because what you're probably going to find is that you'll use it instead of your car. And the thought of getting in your car to drive to the shops is probably the most boring idea ever, unless you like shopping, and I don't. The thought of going to the shops on this and rocking up is the best thing ever. It just makes your life great fun. Everybody looks at you. They all think you're absolutely crazy, but it's probably one of the most enjoyable bikes to ride, and you can put endless stuff into the front. Just in case I hadn't mentioned that, you can put stuff in the front.